welcome to Unlearned Unlimited. My name is Dr. Sito Narcisse. This week, we got Dr. Irvin Scott, Ivy Leaguer at the Harvard School of Education, doing amazing things, one of the most brilliant minds in education. And he's going to talk to us about the Unlearned Unlimited spaces from the ivory tower at Harvard down to the great work he's doing around writing great books and doing great things around the country and trying to transform education around the entire nation. Let's go. Drop the beat.
Hands on the track. Unlearned Unlimited. What? Unlearned Unlimited.
Welcome to Unlearned Unlimited. My name is Dr. Sito Narcisse, and I got my co-host
Tatiana Echevarria. Welcome, y'all.
We got a banger for you this week. Guess what? In the studio, we have Dr. Irvin Scott in the house.
Big deal, huge big deal.
Big deal. Dr. Irvin Scott is one of the co-chairs of the online program and stuff. He's a Harvard faculty, yes, at Harvard University. And yes, he's a brother. Yes, he's been in education for a long time. I've known him for a long time. Most people in the country know he's one of those brilliant minds in education, has done a whole lot of great stuff from K-12 in education all the way to working for the Bill Melinda Gates Foundation. We used to give out money to a lot of people to do some great stuff in the country. And now, he's now changing mindsets at Harvard for the last 10 years, I want to say.
10 years, my 10th year.
To do a lot of stuff. And so we got some really cool things, Tatiana.
I'm so excited. We just met and I was like, okay, it's giving prestigious.
Yeah. So I put my Ivy League gear on. Listen, good evening. How are you?
Well, I should have asked for some Harvard swag, before you got here, right? That's what I should have done. I could have rocked my Harvard man. Like, this is as close as I'm going to get, guys.
We went to party colleges, so
you
I
have the crimson.
I did. Look, I did a little something. I wasn't even intending that, but look at that.
But when I was in Boston, I always say, I used to be like, oh no, I went to a party college. I didn't go to Harvard, but they party at Harvard too. Just FYI. So all you folks at Harvard, I won't give all y'all secret out because y'all down to earth people. Y'all just do it in leadership. So listen, super excited you're here. We appreciate you coming out to the studio.
Yes.
Talk about some great stuff. We're gonna have a great conversation. Not only be informative, but we know you wrote a book as well. We're gonna talk a little bit about that.
Yeah.
And also we know you do a lot of stuff around faith-based and education community. So there's a lot of stuff I know about you, right? But instead of me bragging about all the great stuff you've done, I'm gonna one of the things that me and Tatiana always do on the show is we said the best people that could tell you about themselves is themselves.
I heard that.
Sitting here reading a paper and all that is not, that's
those bios are boring.
That's very, you can bio him up. He's got credentials. He's done.
Are you on Wikipedia?
Well.
Do you have a Wikipedia page?
I actually don't think I have Wikipedia. Somebody help me out there, please.
Listen.
My son does.
But the big thing though I think is really interesting is that we have someone in the studio where when he talks about education, people listen, right?
Yeah.
And has had a lot of experience around the entire world, not just the country, because Harvard's done some great things. And I know I've been a part of going up there, seeing a lot of stuff. So it's just really, we really feel honored that you came out to hang out with us a little bit.
Wow. Honored. I am honored to be here.
Thank you.
I am honored to be here. Thank you so much, Sito and Tatiana. Just a couple things about me real quick. As you mentioned, yes, that's what I'm doing now. Harvard Graduate School of Education. I co-chair the online leadership program at Harvard. That's one of the things that I do. But I also teach in our doctoral program, the EDLD program. And I also lead the leadership initiative for faith in education, which we'll talk about a little bit. But before Harvard, there was Chambersburg, Pennsylvania. That's where I grew up.
Yeah. Oh, sweet.
And
so you're East Coast. You're still East Coaster. I love that.
Tell us a little bit about I want our audience to know the story, right? Because they see they see people like you, right? They're like, man, this is a brother at Harvard, got his doctorate, did all this stuff, but they don't know your story, you grew up, how you grew up, your mom and dad, because I tell folks it's one thing to talk about. You get there, but nobody knows the journey.
Yeah, the journey.
Yeah.
That's an excellent point. I try to write about that in Leading with Heart and Souls, available on Amazon.
We're gonna have his book.
Go ahead, plug.
We're gonna put the book out and plug it on our handles and everything too. So
awesome.
But we'll talk a little bit about that as well.
But your point is well taken that people don't oftentimes understand or fully appreciate the story, especially when people sort of arrive and maybe teaching at Harvard is arriving in some shape, form, or fashion. I'm definitely humbled by it. I also got a couple of degrees from there, but way before any of that was growing up as the fifth child of 6 kids.
No way.
5 boys and 1 girl. The girl was the youngest.
Oh my gosh.
Darlene.
Gotta pray.
Darlene, how was Darlene surviving? How's she managing all the boys?
We were so rough. Darlene, if you are listening, I am sorry.
Darlene.
We are all sorry.
Darlene, I would take full advantage if I was you from these boys. They full advantage, sis.
Darlene is amazing. She is so sweet. But back in the day, we were just so rough, particularly on her dolls. But anyway.
Isn't that bringing up some memories for you, isn't it?
Flashback.
So you're the fourth.
I'm the fifth son of 6
So you're
kids.
technically the last boy.
I am
the last boy.
You know what they used to call me, Tatiana?
What?
The baby boy.
Baby boy.
That's what they
That's
do.
what we call. That's what we call my nephew. He's our little baby boy. We do. He's the only boy, from my sister. But
yeah. That's what they call me.
Yeah,
you the baby boy. Oh, baby. But anyway, and I grew up in the church. That's the other thing that's really, really important. My father, and mother. My father was always a pastor and a preacher, and now he's a bishop. And my mother, of course, worked side by side with him in the church for years. And we're really blessed. Now, interestingly enough, I just came from helping out there at the home. My father's 89, my mother's 85. And they continue to be a blessing to us, although they need a lot more care. I would imagine a lot of your listeners out there are at a place in their lives where they have grandchildren and children, but they also have elderly parents that they have to support and show love to. And so that's sort of where we are now. But anyway, grew up in that family, strict home, strict. Did y'all hear me? I said strict.
Bishop, I know you might be listening to this.
My parents didn't play. That's why
we turned out okay.
That's exactly.
You didn't do too bad. This whole strict thing, it works out pretty well. Like, look what you turned out.
If someone were to ask me, would I change anything in terms of my raising? Maybe I'd have a few less. We call them spankings
Whoopings.
now. Whoopings. See, I didn't know if y'all use that word.
I like to call them love taps.
Love?
What
you talking about tap, though?
Because it has less of an impression of what it actually is. The love taps are like, we go into the bathroom,
right.
and I'm going to pretend it's a tap.
That's exactly right.
But it may not be a tap.
You started to get me concerned when you say tap. I was like, what does she mean by tap?
You know what's funny? My mother used to say, Mom, before you beat us, why don't you give us a warning system? And you know her warning system was?
What was that?
The look.
Oh, yeah.
Once the
Give us the look, and if you don't respond, she's taking you to the bathroom.
She's coming at you with a switch.
Where you show out, you work out. What she said. Where you show out, you work out.
But anyway, of course, those things we don't do these days, or we don't encourage. But back in the day, they were used, and I think in some ways it paid off for me. At least it was a way of helping me to understand what was good and what was not good. But anyway, so I grew up in a very strict family, very loving family also.
Yeah.
I think one thing I'd say about the way I was raised is I learned both things that I would do when I became a parent. Mm-hmm. And I also learned things that I wasn't going to do when I became a parent. Mm-hmm. And so in that way, they were a blessing. My father emphasized faith. Mm-hmm. He emphasized family. And he emphasized education. My father and my mother, they were both really, really focused on making sure that we got a good education. Interestingly enough, though, while education was really important, it really didn't often intersect with my faith experience. It's one of the reasons why now at Harvard, I lead the Leadership Initiative for Faith and Education, which we'll talk about. But anyway, so I grew up, strict family, loving family, went on to college. One of my aspirations always was not necessarily to be the strongest academic person, but to be an amazing athlete.
Really?
That was my goal. I thought I was going to be the next Tony Dorsett. As a matter of fact, I used to practice
Okay.
Cowboys, Tony Dorsett.
Okay.
We got a couple of Cowboys fans here, so I just want to apologize to the public.
Just a little bit. That's okay. We can talk about my journey.
My person on the
later.
right side, she's a very fierce Cowboys
Sito,
fan, but we won't get into that. But
anyway, I was a Cowboys fan for years, and Tony Dorsett, of course, was my big inspiration. I made up a song as an inspiration. I played football when I was in high school. I was serious about being a pro football player at some point in time. And I was an okay athlete. I just wasn't that big. I used to practice in high school with a vision of winning the Heisman. And I kid you not, I made up a song about winning the Heisman Trophy.
Oh my gosh.
Here is the question. Do you all want to hear it?
Yeah, absolutely.
You still remember it?
We
Oh my gosh.
the Heisman song you made up. Let's go.
Okay, y'all get ready to hear the Heisman song Irvin Scott made up when he was in 11th grade, Chambersburg Senior High School, running up and down the bleachers. It went like this. The Heisman, I'm going to win that trophy one day. The Heisman, with the help of God, it's mine. I never won the Heisman Trophy, needless to say.
I need any high school athletes that ever potentially watch this, go ahead and just add that to your training regimen.
Run the bleachers and
why
sing
not?
that song.
Put that on repeat. Listen, just put that song on repeat.
I never won the Heisman Trophy. But when I look back, I think it was something bigger than that. I was just trying to shoot for something that was bigger than where I was. That's bigger than Chambersburg, bigger than just playing football in high school. And I love to say now that maybe that H didn't stand for Heisman, but for Harvard.
Wow.
See, that's what you're able to do when you reflect back on your past.
Yeah.
But anyway, so I went on to Millersville University. I didn't even play football there. Got really excited about English, and then eventually became an English teacher. Loved that. We can talk about that. And then eventually a principal, and then eventually wanted to get my doctorate. That's when I came to Harvard. I incidentally married this beautiful woman named Keisha from Franklin and Marshall College.
Keisha.
Fell in love with Keisha, had 3 boys, and then I went to Harvard. And
Keisha saw the potential too, Doc.
Yes, she did.
She was like, "Listen, I can straighten this guy out." Keisha, I'm just saying what you want to say.
I know. I write about Keisha in my book also.
That's awesome.
But anyway, and then eventually came to Harvard. The rest is history. Okay, that was the background.
So now you gave us some great insight about, we were just talking about this recently, about just like having like a relentless pursuit of something, outside of what was within the 4 walls that you were experiencing at that time. So you had this relentless pursuit at that time, what appeared to be the Heisman, but there was just, like, when you reflect back on it, it was just something more than what it was, right in front of you. What led you, though, to like decide to become a teacher?
Oh, yeah.
Where did that kind of journey begin for you?
That's a wonderful question, Tatiana. I think when I think about it, the thing that triggered me to become a teacher, the actual event, was a professor at Millersville University, where I went to undergrad.
Okay.
And basically she said her name was Liliana Zancu, and she was Romanian. She had this accent. And I wrote papers. It was early English class, freshman year. I wrote papers, and she complimented my papers. She was like, "You're such a good writer." Such a good writer. She said you should do something with your writing. It was the first time someone had said I was a good writer. Like they saw me as having, that I could remember. I'm sure I had a great English teacher actually in the middle school that I could talk about. She pushed me to learn poetry, but she talked about my writing. And she said, consider doing something in English and writing. And then there was another professor by the name of Hazel Jackson, first African-American professor that I had at in college. I had an African-American high school English teacher, but I had never had a professor who was African-American. Her name is Hazel Jackson, encouraged me to consider teaching. as a way of sort of operationalizing my passion for writing.
Right, to kind of tap into that English writing piece.
That's what got me into English. Now, there's something else that was always a part of me that I may not have known that fed that. I mean, and that was my faith. I always had growing up in the church, it's hard to not grow up and have a service mentality. Like people, you are here to serve others. This is not just about you.
That's right.
So now you combine loving literature, loving writing, someone saying go into an education, and then growing up believing that service was the essence of who you are, teaching.
Wow, that's beautiful. I love that story too when you talk about the impact that you felt in that moment when someone spoke to you in a way that fed into, you're like, wait, I like doing this thing, and then someone is complimenting me. One of like my favorite sayings, especially when it comes to education, is like people may not always remember what you said, but they'll remember how you made them feel, right? And in this case, you remembered both. You remember what was said, but I think more so the way that made you feel maybe tapped into something that you like hadn't felt.
I love that. I think that's Maya Angelou.
Yes, it is.
Maya
Angelou.
And it resonates with me.
You know, you may or may not know this, but folks used to call you the poetic educator.
Seriously?
Yeah, because you used to always give, from what I was told, or what I've seen too, you used to always give some type of like poem or something before you would talk.
Still do it.
He's
a snapper, and you know what they do.
And then if he's doing something, I don't know if anybody has experienced this with Dr. Scott. He's always like, it's like a church with him all the time, right? So he's like, listen, we're going to do this, but I want everybody to know. This is how you know he is the son of a bishop.
And you were raised in the church. That does make sense. That absolutely makes sense.
Here's the other beautiful thing about that. I, for many years, I would say didn't fully bring that part of myself to my education experience. I would keep it in the background. I grew up clapping. I grew up hearing someone speak with cadence. I grew up listening to song. And then you get into this world, this traditional world of something, whatever the sector might, for some people might be business and maybe medicine. For me, it was education. And then when we have the tendency to think that we can't bring that stuff with us, when in essence, if you bring it with you, it has a way of distinguishing you.
Absolutely.
It has a way of making you feel like, this is where I belong. Why? Because you brought your whole self. Thank you for saying
your
that.
authenticity. That's part of your authenticity. It's like that's a part of your being.
Which I think also made, your manners and made it easier for people to follow you. Right? And I think that makes a big difference in leadership in general. Right? Yeah. I tell folks, if people are not listening to you, they're not going to follow you.
So
right?
true.
So, a lot of that leadership thing has a lot more to do with influence and trying to get people to buy into something and, see more than themselves, right? So they can lead. So,
such a good point.
Well, we're going to make a pivot, right?
Yes,
we're going to talk about
it's about to get hot.
The stuff, right?
Spicy.
So, we do our homework, right? So, and, the thing we were excited about you coming in is, a lot of times we have different guests that come on and they give different perspectives around different things, right? Variation. We interview folks who are in the education space or in the business space or whatever space they're in, right?
Absolutely.
Because our whole podcast is around education and culture clashing, right? So unlearn are one of the things that you could have said, man, I really didn't have to learn that. I learned this in the real world. And then unlimited is about the solutions that are around those things. And so one of the questions we were excited about asking, we're like, hey, let's ask Dr. Scott some of these really tough questions that deal with education, right? So right now, we are in a political hoorah, I call it, right? Very tribal, people are either for this or for that. I mean, education is in this very contentious space, right? And it doesn't matter where you go in the country, whether you're East Coast, West Coast, North, South, urban district, suburban district, black, white, yellow, or green, you have or don't have, the intensity around education is highly, I guess I can say the word is, I don't want to say volatile, but let's just say
Combative, at least.
or sensitive, right?
Yeah, sensitive.
Well, and I think too, it's not just political. I think there's the cultural aspect that's also a huge factor now in education too.
Well, what would you say, right, that's driving all this in all of the spaces that you're doing? Because you're actually teaching folks.
Yeah.
We're going to be going to these worlds, right? Yeah. And so what do you say are the thing that's driving this right now?
Well, I would say there are multiple drivers. I would say one driver is, from an education standpoint, is that we still have a lot of kids who are not succeeding.
Mm-hmm.
And when you have a lot of kids not succeeding, a lot of communities not succeeding, not a lot of groups not succeeding at the level that others are succeeding, then what that leads to is different solutions. And those different solutions then become something that we argue over. We create combative situations over. So the fact that there are groups that are not succeeding at the level that others are succeeding is one of the reasons why I think we have this these challenges. But that has always existed, right? That's always existed. So I think there are things that have fueled the fire recently.
So can we just clarify some numbers? We love to work off some data and numbers, right? Because there's always perception is reality, right? So there's about 350 million plus Americans in the United States. If you look at the population, maybe about 13% African American or Black, right? Categorizing probably 20% now, I think something like that in Latino world. And then you have the rest, right? When people hear not succeeding, sometimes they only think about it from marginalized communities that are minority. Would you say that that's the group, or would you say the group is wide around anybody that's poor?
Oh yeah, so that group.
So and that's black, white, yellow, green.
Right. Does it have more to do with race? Does it have more to do with class?
And the reason we bring that up is because we look at numbers and we say, man, what people think in their head is usually not the actual number.
Well, historically, race has been a huge driver. Race and or students of color. So Latino students, African American students, Pacific Islander students, and those students continue to struggle. But lately, it's been more just poor students. Rural white students are really struggling. If you look at data on boys in particular, it doesn't matter what race you are. If you were a boy, you were struggling big time.
And they're also identified more for special education
needs. They are
services.
Committing suicide at rates higher than females are. And so you can no longer say this is just a racial thing, although that has historically been a huge driver. More and more, it's just being different in some shape, form, or fashion. And those are the students that are struggling. But to your original question, there are different philosophies around how you actually respond to that, and that creates divides. And I think the politics has become very, very, very divisive, and people are going into their sort of camps and saying, we want to do it this way. If you're in a particular state, we're going to do it this way. And so, but anyway.
Now I have a maybe semi-controversial question for you.
Make it fully controversial.
You being semi, I can't see that.
I don't know. Well, let's see.
She's full woman.
But, I went into education because I knew how meaningful having an education is. And I still believe that. However, I feel like, is there some truth behind the fact that education, instead of it being, what I felt was like the greatest equalizer, right? And I do feel like it still has the potential to be that. Yeah. But is there some truth to maybe it is also playing into the disparities that we continue to see amongst communities? Absolutely. Instead of it being an equalizer, it is actually just continuing to widen economic gaps.
Absolutely.
Achievement gaps, whatever it is.
Absolutely. If someone wants to really hear the facts behind this, and a person wiser than me to speak to your very point, they should really listen to David Brooks. Okay. David Brooks, I heard a talk that he gave yesterday. It was online. He's just brilliant about how particularly the elite in this country have created more of a divide between not just the middle class, but not just the lower economic class, but the middle class.
Mm-hmm.
And so the greater your education at an institution like this,
Mm-hmm.
The more your opportunities are at some astronomically higher level.
Mm-hmm.
And that creates a divide not only for students of color, but students in rural white communities, for Pacific Islander students, no matter Native American students, just major, major divides. And so in some ways, and I don't want to get too political, but that's how you end up with the person who's in office right now.
Mm-hmm.
Because those of us, and I'll put myself in that camp that have a elite education, have not figured out how to bridge the gap between that elitism and academic sort of success and perhaps other types of success, and those who don't have those
the same
opportunities.
Resources.
And so, yes, and that goes way beyond race and so forth.
Absolutely.
Now, I have tried, and I would say Sito has been in this category also as individual who's done the vast majority, if not all of our work in urban communities. We have tried to bridge that gap. But I think even education can only go but so far. You have to bridge that gap through housing. You have to bridge that gap through other economic opportunities that give individuals an opportunity to gain access to those other opportunities.
Well, we talked about too how people don't see education as like a public health issue, but it is.
It is.
If you look at it, and if we kind of unlearn how we look at education, it kind of operating in a silo, so to speak. But if you look at it as a public health issue, where we do need kids that have access to medical care.
Absolutely.
We need communities that have access to affordable housing, or just straight up access to a grocery store that's not a corner store,
very true.
that has healthy food options for kids. Let's also go to transportation. We have kids that, may need to walk a certain amount, to get to school. So if we looked at education and more of that like public health issue, I wonder if that would be some way to move that trend. So yes.
No, you're exactly right. And it also suggests that education is a vehicle, but it's not the only vehicle. We tend to see the impacts of the other things, the lack of housing, the lack of being in a food desert, the lack of transportation. We tend to see it in the schools, but we don't always have the power to leverage it and to change it moving forward.
So to that point, let me ask you in a different way, right? So to me, it's an entire ecosystem.
It is an
Yes.
ecosystem.
So an ecosystem, for those of you out there, is like the entire collage of what makes the world kind of move, or a community, right? So if you had to rank for those who are trying to make that type of transformation to change an ecosystem, right? Because I know you talk a lot about ecosystems in general, right?
Yeah.
Like if you're going to make changes, you got to think of the whole picture, not just this one slice, right?
Yeah.
How would you rank it and say, here's the top 3 I would suggest or recommend that you go after changing first?
Wow, that's an interesting question.
Or first, second, or third, right?
First, second, and third. I'm going to answer that question, but I'm going to clarify. So I do talk about, and I write about, the PK-12 education ecosystem. So you can go online and find an article where Irvin Scott writes about, what do I call it? New framework or something for a new day, PK-12 education ecosystem. I wrote this particular article out of the Advanced Leadership Initiative Social Impact Review in 2019. And I wrote the article in response to COVID because I was thinking, oh my goodness, COVID is going to force us to think very different about how we support kids, particularly from an education standpoint and beyond. So I wrote this paper. You can find out and learn a little more about it. But to Sito's question in terms of ranking, I would probably start with health. I'd start with health. That is the way, at least in this country, all kids arrive. They don't arrive in a school. They arrive in a hospital. And And so
now they also arrive at home sometimes. You know,
they
there's also
arrive at homes.
But nonetheless, it's
but
all
even if they're arriving at home, they're arriving with a healthcare provider.
Yes, absolutely. Yes.
Even if it's what are the
doulas?
Doula. Thank you.
Yeah.
A lot of young mothers are going with doulas. That doula has been trained medically.
Yes.
Not necessarily how to teach reading.
So everybody doesn't know what a doula is. Doula is
What is a doula?
So they can support like a mom to be able to deliver at home versus like having an at-home birth, versus doing it, within the confines of, a hospital. And, it is becoming a lot more common to want to do at-home births. There's obviously a lot of studies about, healthcare, women of color, what they do or don't receive, whether, unfortunately, there's also truth behind how individuals of color experience healthcare providers, whether there is trust or lack thereof. So there's lots of stuff behind that.
So you got health as number one.
I have health as number one.
Number two.
Do you want to hear the truth?
Hey,
this is Irvin's personal perspective.
First of all, let me just frame this. Let's just be clear. Me and Tatiana talk to everybody, and we only want truth, right?
Okay.
Because we know
we didn't invite you to be settled.
Okay.
There we go.
And we say this humbly to everybody, but like if you look at our shows, we're pretty clear. We want you to come in and tell the truth.
All right.
Unlearn is learning about what they should have told you that they lied to you about, right? And now you become an adult. You're like, wait a minute, if they told me this from the get-go, I'd have been better.
Okay. Beautiful response to my question. So let me just also clarify that I don't think these are sequential. Like this one has to happen. And I don't think these are in isolation.
Yeah, but they're your top three.
They were my top three, and they have to work in an integrated way. The next one I would combine to, I would say faith and family.
Can you share a little bit more about what you mean by that?
I mean a sense of like, someone brings you into this world, at least in the U.S. context, through a healthcare provider. But someone brought you to this world through some type of relationship. Well, what is that relationship that will sustain you once the health care provider has brought you in? And that looks like different for everybody, right? This notion that it has to look a certain way. I don't want to get into that, but someone has to love that child.
Yeah, that's
Yes.
right. That's right.
Because they also only spend so much time at school, and then what happens when they go
they ain't even get to school yet.
Yeah, right.
That's
even
right.
before that.
They didn't get to school yet.
Right.
So the leading up to school is one piece.
Leading up to school, who is loving that child?
Yeah.
Who is reading to that child? Who is protecting that child? That has to happen. It can be done through an individual. It can be done through
community.
It can be done in many different ways.
I would argue a lot of triggers and traumas now are because those things have not happened.
They didn't happen.
Right?
They didn't happen.
Everything happens by design, intentionally or unintentionally.
Sito, can I go here? Or they happened and someone's critiqued how the person did it.
That's right.
Or 100%. What that person looked like doing it.
That's right. That's right.
That person is showing love to that child who's going to show up one day in somebody's classroom and going to have to respond based on what exists.
That's right. That's right.
Y'all don't make me preach. I didn't come here to preach. But anyway, okay, so faith and family, and we have different perceptions of faith also. Right. But I think it's important. Right. Spirituality, faith. We know historically in this country and beyond, just across the world, it has played a huge role in the shaping of lives of people.
Yeah.
I think even just affirmative talk, right? Like I think those pieces too for people that may not necessarily be spiritual or faithful. But just even the way, I mean, what do they say about how many times you need to hear like positive praise or, whatnot?
Which we always don't hear.
That's
when you tend to hear a lot more negative than
the other thing that it brings is a sense of there's something greater than who I am and something greater than me. Which is really important. And again, I think that can come in many ways. I have a way that it comes for me, but I don't critique how it comes for others. I just applaud the fact that they're finding a way to do it.
Health,
faith and family.
Number 3.
Education.
Education. Say more.
Well, there's just no way in a society that we're living in today that you can thrive without learning, without knowledge, without wisdom, without being able to read, without numeracy. And in this country in particular, We think that is so important. The founders of the country think that is so important. Although the founders did some jacked up stuff, they got this one right. It is so important that this country is going to be founded on this notion of compulsory education, which basically means if you're a citizen, you have to be educated.
Yeah, that's right.
And
That's
the
right.
country has to make sure that you're educated.
Yeah. But you got people now, Irvin, just to push a little bit. They're telling you, now you're at the university, they say, well, you don't got to go to college. You don't got to do none of that stuff. You just go straight to the workforce and go make money.
Okay.
But hold on. Here's the second part to that, though.
Okay.
There's also truth in you have kids who are leaving. I mean, we were talking about this. We have kids that are leaving high school that are still, we say that they're prepared and they go into college and they're not remotely prepared. We have kids that are graduating from college and are going into the workforce and then are like deer in the headlights. Are not prepared for the workforce either.
Yes.
So there may be some pushback about whether or not, like, okay, went through college, got my first job, got fired within the first week. So like, was it was the college experience sufficient?
Right.
Was it challenging enough?
Yeah.
There's a lot to say about kids, whether or not they have grit nowadays. And that's a whole different conversation for another day.
Good
but
point.
so, to Sito's point, like, is it necessary?
Okay, so let me just be really clear. It's a great question. Y'all, they had some great questions on this show right here, boy. So let's just be really clear. When I was talking about compulsory education, I'm talking about pre-K to 12.
Pre-K 12, yep.
That should be required for everybody.
Okay.
I'm in agreement with that.
Full stop. After that, there is a debate. I land on a particular side of that debate. I grew up in an education sort of ethos where basically it was like college or career, but we really mean college.
Right.
That's basically what we meant for the past, 15, 20 years in education reform. We're like college and career, but we really mean college. College and career, but we really mean college. Let me just be honest. I think that has hurt us a bit. Now that I look back on that education reform time, I think that's hurt us. Why? Number one, college is expensive. Not everybody can afford it. We said, go to college, go to college, go to college. We make it
impossible for you to pay for it.
But we didn't tell you how you're going to pay for it. And then when you leave, to your point, Tatiana, you may not get a job. And now you got all this debt.
That's right.
And then we got all these educators say, go to college, go to college. Ain't none of y'all paying for their loans, are you?
But also, like, let's also
listen,
you don't
Harvard needs to decrease that tuition.
Well, I can go. Don't let me forget.
$52 billion down, man.
Harvard waives tuition for all students who get in of a certain financial background.
Okay.
So you don't have to pay.
We got questions about that too.
Right. And that comes from something completely separate.
We're going to hold that for the next segment.
Sounds good.
All right.
Just to make sure I'm really clear. So I am a firm believer in college. I pushed all my kids to be in college. Incidentally, anything that I believe in, it's usually something that I would want for my own kids. My kids, Irvin, Leon, and Nicholas, my wife and our kids, Irvin, Leon, and Nicholas, I used to have what we call the Illen test. I write about it in my my book. The Illen test is I stands for Irvin, L stands for Leon, N stands for Nicholas. If I'm going to advocate for anything for other people's children, it has to pass the Illen test. If I wouldn't advocate it for my own children, I advocated for going to college for my kids. And so I was a strong advocate for all kids. But looking back on it, now that I'm a little further down in my years in education reform and leadership, I think we could have done a better job of talking about what career options are and what they look like and which ones are viable. Viable meaning you can actually raise a family and have a home. Not all of them are viable.
Yeah, that's right.
And so I think we've given short shrift to the career discussion, and we need to do a better job of it.
Now, I'm going to give a little number here because I'm curious about what your thoughts are here. So according to a recent Gallup poll, public confidence, as we've been talking about K-12 education, has hit a near historic low. with only about 26% of Americans expressing a great deal of confidence.
What year is that?
Schools.
Come on now, Tatiana.
Now, I don't have a year on that, okay?
But probably recent.
But probably pretty recent. At the same time, we've seen a sharp increase in legislation aimed at regulating what can be taught in schools, right? And we're not going to get into that also. We live in Florida, and that's a rabbit hole that we can dive deep in.
Can y'all bring me back for part 2 for that conversation?
Goodness gracious. Just no, and the title will be Florida. What are you doing? So there's
I am in Florida, by the way. Anyway.
What do you think, what's the correlation you see between like the waning trust in education and like this legislative push?
Well, first of all, I think it's caught up in the culture wars.
Mm-hmm.
It's caught up in socio-political issues.
Mm-hmm.
It's caught up in, I talked about faith, and I think that faith or spirituality or religion, certain religious groups have used dog whistles around what they believe might be taught in schools as a way of coming in to control schools.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's very unfortunate. I think ultimately, I agree, parents have the right to make sure that their kids are being taught in a way that they are in agreement with. That is the parent's right. But
at what point is it too much, though?
Well,
that's a subjective feeling, right?
That's a beautiful thing about our schools. You don't have to keep them in the public schools, right? And so if you don't like what's being taught to your child, move your child.
Right.
Don't try to change it for everybody's children. And so I think that's what is sort of a little convoluted and unfortunate about what's happening in education today. People have issues with what's being taught, but rather than changing it for their own children and their child only, they're trying to change it for all of children, all America's children. And if you ain't paying all America's children's mortgage, don't try to change all America's children's curriculum.
I love it. Love it. That's exactly.
Say it louder. Also for our, I just think about teachers too and the predicament that they find themselves in. Whatever their own personal, belief systems are, whether it's spiritual, political, whatnot. But it's this sense of constantly feeling like if you say one wrong thing, you do something that for you feel is the best choice. Or, and that's what they were entrusted to do. Like you were entrusted to
People
care
come
for
after them.
And, it turns into something that is insane.
Yeah.
So I worry about as we continue to see like such highly politicized, arguments and culture wars, how much more that's also going to impact just the reality of individuals who desire to work in education.
Yeah, that is a concern also because it's Sito's been a superintendent.
Yeah.
And those jobs are particularly politically fraught these days. But anyway.
I was just to Tatiana's point, we're going to put a pin in the and shift.
Yeah.
I want to just talk about your book that you wrote, which I really think is good. You guys, Harvard's been caught up in the crosshairs of this anti-woke political movement, et cetera, right? And, Harvard's always been known around the space for trying to lead through different type of changes, right? And the reality is not just Harvard, these Ivy League schools, these folks, folks who've come to those type of schools, whether people agree with it or not, have had much opportunity to get into very influential spaces, not just in America, but worldwide, right?
Yeah.
What's the thing that you're seeing in those spaces that people are talking about to kind of lead through those changes, right? And because what we're seeing all the time is even more separation in ideology and even bigger debates, right? About what's right, what's wrong. I mean, look at the difference between what Harvard did and Columbia did, for example. Or, I wonder, like, I was sitting there telling somebody, well, what would that look like if it was at Princeton in New Jersey? or what would people in Oxford say, right? Like, because you guys, your influence over decades in the education realm, right?
Is significant.
It's significant, right? I mean, and I'm not saying like, it's not that the schools, here's what I learned. It's not that the schools are better, but it's the space y'all have created to do a lot of different things. And, every kid that sits at a table, the parents always say, I want them to go to, you always hear Ivy League school. Whether they can make it or not, it's a different story, right?
Yeah.
Or get the opportunity. But the question
Or get the opportunity. I'm so glad you said that.
Get the opportunity, right? But the question is like, how are you guys doing, those who are influencing these minds? Yeah. Because they're most likely are going to be the ones that are leading companies, leading this. Because I remember when I went on that Harvard campus, that was first time because of you, right? When I was there, I'm sitting there like, yo, these people like, they're families and generation of people who run stuff, right? So whether it's CEO of this, CEO of that. And so how they think about things, right, will move whatever industry or whatever stuff that they're doing. So how are you guys thinking about that space to do that? And how do you think about that space to influence what goes on currently not only here in the United States, but also around the world? Yeah, a couple of things. First of all, again, amazing question. Let me just first say, I'm so proud of Harvard today. I didn't used to wear Harvard paraphernalia, although I have 2 degrees from there. I teach there. I rarely wore Harvard paraphernalia. One of the reasons why, whether it was a hat or
a pin, whatever.
Anything. One of the reasons why is because I felt like it was an opportunity for me to be humble and not to parade the university.
Okay.
Because I don't want people to think, oh, you're at Harvard or whatever. That wasn't my goal. Now I want people to say, you're at Harvard, because I'm so proud of what they're doing. I'm so proud of them standing up against this administration around all of these various issues. So that's number one. Number two, to get closer to your question, Harvard is not perfect, and it's got to do a better job, and it understands that it's got to do a better job, I would say. Oh, incidentally, a disclaimer. I am not speaking on behalf of Harvard.
These are my personal sentiments.
My personal sentiments. Please write that down. I love my job.
No, but I appreciate your transparency, though. Thank you.
I'm speaking on behalf of a person who just happens to get a paycheck from Harvard. But a person, to your point, who has access to privilege also. It is a privilege to be at a place of such renown, such history, such
it's
esteem.
A prestigious,
It is a privilege. And we have access to individuals, to Sito's point, who will go on and lead and have impact. And so we have to make sure that we're doing a better job. Number one, making sure that they have a mindset that goes beyond just thinking one way. I think that's one of the things that we were critiqued about. We're critiqued that if you're going to be Harvard, you're going to be at Harvard, you have to think a certain way, and they have a way of teaching a certain way. First of all, that's not true. No one tells me what I have to teach in my classroom. I've been there 10 years. No one has told me once the way I have to teach. I teach in a way that I think is important based on my experience, based on the literature, based on the evidence, to prepare leaders to lead in K-12 education. So this notion that if you go there, you are in some way...
It's almost like indoctrinated in a certain way.
Right. That's not true. But we do, I think, have to do a better job of ensuring that students who have a different perspective feel like they can share that perspective in a place like Harvard University. But I think that's not just Harvard, that's all elite institutions.
Right, absolutely.
Right? And so we can do a better job there. And we have to do a better job of making sure this is to, I always forget his name. But anyway, he talks about proximity. He is the one that
Vygotsky?
No, not Vygotsky. The brother who did the justice, who has the memorial in Alabama. It will come to me. Y'all have to edit this whole part out. But anyway, he talks about proximity. And we have to do a better job of ensuring that our students who make it to this privileged university stay proximate to the ones that don't have access to that privilege.
So would you say that proximity could also be like how they then take their talents and also go back and pour into their own communities.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Bridge gaps.
And I think we've talked about that a lot,
Yeah.
that there comes a moment that where you begin to
Brian
excel.
Stevenson.
Brian
Sorry.
Stevenson.
Brian Stevenson.
You knew it
Sorry.
was going to come to you.
I knew it was coming.
But like you elevate professionally
Yeah.
or, through an institution like Harvard. And then what happens with all that talent?
Yeah.
If that talent doesn't make its way back in some capacity
Yeah.
to the community that doesn't have as many resources
Yeah.
that you came from,
Yeah.
then what?
I'm going to tell you right now, straight up, so many of this is Irvin's perception. So many individuals in movements like Make America Great Again probably think they could never get to a place like Harvard University.
Mm.
And perhaps that's problematic. If people, I don't care where you're coming from, whether it's people in Hurricane Katrina. I just watched that on Netflix.
That was
amazing.
Yeah.
That's another group of individuals. Could they perceive themselves as getting to a place like Harvard? And this is David Brooks's argument. He says, basically, we have created such elitism in this country that people here,
Think that
all
it's
they can
almost
do is
impossible.
get angry at you.
Yeah.
Because they don't think it's realistic to get
They don't
there.
think they could ever.
And you know what's crazy
And
about
there's
that? What I find the most craziest about that is when you actually get into those spaces and sit and you're like, wait a minute, I can dialogue. And 90% of the belief system you have has more to do with your perception. That you can't be there.
Right.
That's very true. Number one, in some ways, because people here aren't trying to understand or talk to people there, and people there don't believe they could ever have a conversation. What
Ain't
you
that the
talking
truth?
about? Sorry.
Now, okay, so we want you to gloat on yourself a little bit. We're going to pivot a little bit, and we're going to talk about you and some of the things that you've done. And we want you to share a little bit about it. Okay?
Okay.
All right, so let's talk about leading with heart and soul.
Leading with heart and soul.
What prompted you to write this book? And what is the core message you hope to convey to today's educational leaders through your book?
It's a beautiful question. What prompted me to write the book? I have to be honest. The Lord. I felt led to write it.
Okay.
I was 30 years.
Ain't nothing wrong with that answer. Okay? Nothing wrong with it.
It's the truth. Veritas. That's what Veritas means. Truth. It was 30 years in education. By this time, I was probably in my 5th or 6th year at Harvard. And I was and I felt led to write it. And so I just began to, on my whiteboard there in my office, I began to write it out. And it came pretty quickly. So that's the reason. What's the message? Great question. I think one of the things that if you were to ask me, what's one thing you are working to unlearn, which is you guys. I love that notion. And that is that, and I alluded to this earlier, and that is that there are parts of who I am that I can't bring to doing work in public spaces. Including my faith. I think I spent many, many years, I've been in education going on 35 years. I would say I've probably spent too many of those years thinking that I had to hold in who I was spiritually. And while I think you do have to respect the separation of church and state, so I can't go in, and I have never gone into a classroom and tried to proselytize or transform or save or anything. I do feel like I probably could have done a better job of reflecting my faith in a way that was not hidden. Okay. And so one of the things that I would encourage, I'm hoping the book does, is allows people to really live into who they are as not just educators, but who they are in other parts of as individuals.
In totality.
That's well said. And I think in doing that, you become a better educator. You become better at all that you do when you don't feel like one part of you has to be over here, hidden. And I know there's potential risk in that, but I think life is worth, and our kids are worth taking that risk.
Yeah.
What would you say is a gut punch that you went through that you've confronted, or in our world, would you say unlearned truth, right? That you confronted, that you're like, that really impacted you in a very particular way in this space?
Wow. There are a couple in the book. One was, oh man, which one do I give? All right. One was when and this may seem like not that big of a deal, but it was a big deal. One was when a leader came into my school. It was after I was a principal for a couple of years. We got a new leader, a new superintendent. And she came into the school for the first time. And I was so excited about the way we got up and running. Is the first day of school. I'm the principal. It's about 1,300 students in the school. And it was the beginning of the day. And she came into the school, came walking down the hall. I can still see her. I was excited to see her. And she didn't crack a smile. It's the first time I'm seeing her.
Wow.
And she's looking at me sternly. And it turned out there were like 2 or 3 students who were still in their locker, and the bell had rung. What are these students doing in the hallway? Why aren't all kids in their classroom once the bell is rung? I'm thinking to myself, last time I checked, this is the first time you're talking to me. I'm like, how does a person confront a person like this on the first time that they're meeting them?
Yeah.
Especially when they're in charge of so many kids and so many educators. And so the gut punch there was, not everybody knows how to lead people.
Or I was going to say, people, they're just not nice.
But when you would think, when you get to that level, now maybe I'm over dramatizing, but that's the way it felt to me,
Right.
Tatiana.
No, but I mean, that's absolutely.
They need some home trainings. That's what they need home training.
Boy, we're going down a rabbit hole here.
Another rabbit hole. We got a lot of rabbit holes. But anyway, why was that a gut punch? Well, I wrote about it, and it turned out that was a foreshadowing of things to come. And not everybody who arrives in leadership. First of all, one big lesson I've learned over the years, leadership matters.
Absolutely.
And it matters in both good and bad ways.
Yeah, that's right.
And so I think we're seeing that even today. All right, I'll stop on that.
No, that's awesome. So we're going to ask you just a few more questions here, looking ahead, not only things that you've like unlearned, but we're also like talking about unlimited possibilities, especially in this K-12 space that we're in. I am hopeful, like this is my personal belief, like that this season that we're in education, that it's just a season, right? Like we're going to have a turning of the tides at some point, because I look at, my niece and my nephew, one who's in middle school, one who's in elementary school. And I'm like, I want them, I can't say I had, and maybe I was just naive, but like, I think of like my K-12 educational experience. I'm like, man, like I really did enjoy that. Like I had teachers that like, I felt like cared about me and that were amazing and wonderful. And I had a 7th grade, it was Jamaican lady, still remember her to this day, Miss Harris. And she put Tupac's poetry book in front of me. Probably shouldn't have been reading that in 7th grade. We'll talk about that later. But it was the rose that grew from the concrete. And that was the first time that I was like, someone saw me for who I was. And I was a student of color that needed some exposure to someone in literature that wasn't necessarily a white author. And I'm not saying that there's anything wrong with that, but I needed that moment
to see yourself,
to see myself.
Yeah,
absolutely.
And she was also who introduced me to the West Side Story. So that was, just beautiful experience.
That's for your Latina side.
For my Latina side, my little Puerto Ricans, okay? Not my big, let me be clear. Let me be clear there. But I want to talk about like unlimited possibilities. After this season, I feel like we're going to get out of, this space we're in. Can you talk a little bit about your it's Leadership Institute for Faith and Education?
Yeah.
What was the thinking behind that? Yeah. And what do you see as the unlimited possibilities with this work that you're doing?
So I'll get to LIFE. Leadership Initiative for Faith and Education, acronym is LIFE. Unlimited opportunities. I'll get to LIFE in a second, but I can't help but to answer the question around unlimited opportunities, or what gives me hope is another way that I would think about it in relationship to the teacher you just talked about. The thing that gives me hope is the fact that we have 3.5 million teachers in this country.
Yes.
I was one of them. You were one of them.
I was one of them. Yeah.
They are out there and they give me hope that those stories that you just talked about will continue to happen, no matter what happens at the national level, whether we have an education department, whether we don't have an education department, whether we have states trying to get rid of teaching certain things about Afro-American history, and so forth. So what gives me hope is the fact that there are 3.5 million teachers in this country who come to this job with a sense of, no, I'm not just doing it because I want to make money, although I have to do that, and I think we should pay them more. We've got to make sure it's a viable career. But I come to this job because I want to transform the lives of students. And that's really what gives me hope. So I just wanted to be really clear about that. And I'm so grateful. If you're a teacher and you're listening to this right now,
thank you.
Thank you. You're doing amazing work, and we're grateful for you. In terms of Leadership Initiative for Faith and Education, basically what we're trying to do is shine light on faith and education partnerships that are actually having an impact on students' lives that are happening all across the country. Okay. They are happening.
Talk a little bit about that.
For example, United for Hope in Nashville, Tennessee. That is a nonprofit that has church groups with volunteers from the church going into school classrooms and helping students with reading. They're not going in to have altar calls. They're going in to make sure the kids can read.
Can you, I think that's such a big thing though, when we are in like this culture war season and people understanding like faith-based organizations can do amazing work. And it has nothing to do with coming in and preaching about Jesus and
so true.
Or whatever that faith.
I was going to say any organization that helps kids.
True.
Right? I don't think there's enough organizations helping kids, right?
Yes.
So I think what's crazy is anybody that walks through a door, anyone that has an opinion about anything, people feel like they can't help. Like I think anybody can help. I mean, it's just not like the problem now is it always feels like people are, and I think it's also because of the culture, like the tension that we're in right now. People are always trying to determine why you and not you. And you get into this context, right?
It's almost like too many cooks in the kitchen. Yeah. And usually with that mindset, it's like, it's not a good thing. But if we shift the way we look at the cooks that are in the kitchen, then maybe, to what you would like to see happen.
And use the cooks in the kitchen metaphor. And so one of the things that we're trying to do is show that if the cook happens to be a person of faith, they may not be in there to cause people to think about their faith. They may be in there because they have a strong relationship with that family, the strong relationship with that kid, strong relationship with that community. And if you show them how to talk about reading or math or whatever, they will be able to do that and do it in a more effective way because they've got that relationship.
That's right.
Absolutely.
And oftentimes they have those relationships because they're with the kids more often. They're with the families more often.
Right.
And so we're just trying to shine light on that and elevate those opportunities. And at the same time, make sure that those who are doing it aren't doing it with a sort of motive of transforming lives spiritually.
So we're running out of time.
Yeah, we
so
are.
I'm gonna.
This has been amazing, by
There's
the
two
way.
things. One, I'm gonna ask one last question just around the Harvard thing because I do want to ask this question.
Yeah.
And then me and Tatiana are gonna ask you some Unlearned Unlimited rapid
Fire ones?
Yeah, we're gonna just do maybe two of those. But we'll just do two.
And you're only gonna give like one sentence.
Okay. You know that's hard. But anyway,
first,
go ahead.
But first, let me ask this one last question because
Okay.
this was a question people really wanted to ask around the Harvard thing. And I was telling folks they're going to be interviewing you, so they're like, yeah. So Harvard has the largest educational endowment. About I think in 2024, it said it
Over
was
50 billion.
about 53.2 billion was the number, right? What do they do with that money? I guess to say to push through the cultural educational wars, which is one. And then critics argue that universities with large endowments should be doing more to lower tuition or provide more access. What do you think about that? And
To the second question, I would agree.
okay.
I would agree. I know these endowments have certain specifications and requirements, which even the president can't do anything about. I don't know the policies and laws that govern endowments, but I know they are tight and they are stringent. But if Brother Man right here was in charge of them, I'd be using more of them for
To
lowering
increase
tuition
access and to increase access.
Increase
Got it.
access. So that's what I would say about that particular. What was the first question?
What do they do in terms of like pushing through all these issues with cultural wars and those things? Like how?
Yeah, I really think my personal belief as a faculty member at Harvard is we should do the thing that we do the best. We do research best. Some of the highest quality research happens in elite institutions like Harvard, but not just Harvard. So we should do research best, try to find truth best, try to find evidence, and then we should teach. I think we should try to avoid the culture wars. I think we should just teach students and how to be great leaders, how to create opportunities, how to be great individuals. So do research and teach, leave the culture wars to everybody else. That's what I would say.
Awesome. Okay.
All right, let's do it.
You ready?
Let's go.
I have two. Can I ask the two questions?
Knock 'em out.
Okay, awesome. Okay. First
He's
one.
got to stick to the
These
one
are
sentence.
rabbits.
Rapid fire,
Yes.
one sentence only. Okay. We are going to give you think time because we're all educators here, okay?
Sounds good. I appreciate it.
Okay. So, what's the one thing that has to be unlearned to fix American education?
I think the one thing that has to be unlearned to fix American education, which perhaps many people have learned over time, is that not all kids can succeed at high levels. There are people who believe that. They've learned over time. I don't know how you learn this, but they've learned that certain kids can't, and I think they have to unlearn, including some educators, that all kids can achieve at high levels. High is relative.
I was going to say,
high for
yes,
you, might not be
high for someone
me,
else. Yeah,
but
absolutely.
high levels.
All right.
Okay. All right. This is a question I love. And for all our folks, you are a high school person. I am not a high school person. I love the babies, so I am a sappy girl. Okay. So I love
Sappy
this
with a capital
question.
S.
Okay. Actually, sappy with all capital letters.
All
okay.
caps.
Let's just say that. What's the best piece of advice you've ever received from a student?
From a student?
Yes.
Oh, wow.
Or maybe something you've learned from a student. Maybe it doesn't necessarily need to be a piece of advice, but maybe something that
that's
you've
a good
learned from a
question.
student.
I really want to be thoughtful about this. I've learned so many things from students. I have students running through my mind.
Isn't that always the best part? There's just so many that you can pick.
I can't wait to see the comments your Susie put under this show.
I write about this particular student. Oh, okay. I read about a student in my book whose mother asked me to take him to see his dying father. True story.
Mm-hmm.
And so I drive him there. And when we get to the house, he doesn't want to get out the car. But eventually he does get out. And he goes in and we spend just about 5 minutes or so there, not very long. And then we drive away. And I write about that experience because in that moment, I think that student taught me the power of love and persistence.
Yeah.
I think that was really, really hard for him to do. I don't know what all the dynamics was around their relationship, but that was hard for him to do. I think in some ways he did it because of his mother asking him to do it. But you don't often come into contact with that kind of experience, particularly as an educator. And I learned a lot from that.
That's beautiful. Thank you for sharing that.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
So I have two questions, and that would be a two. Question number one is, what's one thing we're already unlimited in, but we don't realize it?
I don't think we realize how unlimited our love for one another can be.
And that's the only way that things get better around here.
Only way.
Doesn't matter whether we're talking about education, whether we're talking about the economy, just anything. I think if we lose our ability to see the humanity in one another.
And we have to understand that there are people who are on earth who feel it's their responsibility to ensure that we never realize that we have unlimited love for one another.
Final question.
Oh, that was good.
You made it through. Made it through the episode. What's one question we should be asking about in education that we are not?
That's a great question. Oh man, so many different responses for that. But I will just say, short answer, who else is not at the table when it comes to educating America's children? We don't have everybody at the table. And if you're not at the table, then you're on the menu.
Interestingly, you did some work. You worked for the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. The grant I just worked for was through the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, doing some work with a network of 13 schools to work on agency, belonging, and connectedness with students.
Beautiful.
And when I would meet with the schools, one of the things that I would ask for is if we can have students at the table, please bring them. Oftentimes we have a lot of adults that make a lot of decisions for children. And I know there's, the whole saying of you're meant to be, what is it you're talked to or, not listened to or whatever the saying, I can't think of what, the saying is.
I know what you're saying.
But they are the ones that are at receiving this education day in and day out. And they have a lot to say. And whether or not we want to listen to it, that's a conversation for another day. But they have some insight on what their experience is day in and day out as they're sitting in seats, listening to lectures, getting tested every other day, because that's a whole other thing.
Children are to be seen and not heard.
I was like, what is the saying?
That's
but
right.
Yes. And one of the most powerful conversations I had was when a student shared what their experience was like day in and day out of not feeling seen at school.
Wow.
So to your point, who is not at the table, sometimes it is kids.
It's the kids.
It's the kids that are most affected by what we're doing each day, and they're not being heard.
So we got another banger.
We do.
And the
It was
show
so good.
has to end. Listen, I know we went a little bit over time, but guess what? We're super excited. Dr. Irvin Scott, straight from Harvard and Boston, to come down and hang out with us, talk through some stuff. Really excited about the work that you've always been doing. Please go out and get his book, Leading with Heart and Soul. Very practical, very great book. He also has a whole lot of other articles he talked about, but make sure that you get, for us at Unlearned Unlimited, we always want to talk about truth and not myths, right? That's why we call it Unlearn and the Unlimited Possibility and Solutions. Make sure you find us, go share, like, subscribe, Facebook, LinkedIn, Instagram, we're on the gram, you name it, we're on it.
On the TikToks.
We're on the TikToks, and we're just appreciative of all of the followers that we have. If you want to contribute, ask more comments. One thing we love to do is if you have comments after the fact, write the comments in the section. We will get them out to Dr. Scott. He stays connected with people that connects with him. He also has his own podcast too. They want to go check that out too. I think it's called Office Hours. I checked it out too. Yeah, so you'll see some of that. You'll see some of that as well. But the goal that we always say is to try to get the reality out and not what people think is not get out what perception is, but what reality is. And that's why we do Unlearned Unlimited. Another banger. All right. Thanks for coming out. See you next time.